I'm Colleen, and I'll be guiding your stretch session today, focusing on the hips, hamstrings, and lower back. For your practice, you'll want to make sure you have a pillow or multiple pillows, a bolster or a cylindrical type pillow. You can always replicate this with a towel roll or a blanket roll at home. A couple blocks, two preferably, and of course a strap. And for our first pose today, we'll begin by creating almost like a little incline bench with your props. So for me, knowing that this is a little bit of a flatter bolster, I like to put a couple blocks underneath. If you have one of those larger, big round bolsters, you might not need to use the blocks at all. And then from there, you'll sit your hips right in front of the bolster. You can set your pillow off to the side momentarily. And then lay all the way back and make sure that the mid, upper back, head and neck is fully supported. Nothing's hanging off. Once you lay back, take a moment to walk the shoulder blades a little closer together. Let them really cradle the base of the heart. And then, of course, check in with what's present for you in the low back. If it's pinchy, it's quite common, just means that you need to inch your hips a little further forward and away from the props. This will usually create more space in the low back, freeing up any tension from the lumbar spine. Then from there, any variation of the legs is welcomed here. So you could have the knees bent, feet flat onto the floor. You might find this a little more stable for the hips and the low back. If you're looking for an inner groin or inner hip opening, you could take the soles of the feet and let the knees fan out to the side. If this is the variation you're choosing, my recommendation would be to take your pillows and place them just between the outer thigh and the floor, just filling in the gap with props so that the body has something to rest into. And then from there, any placement of the hands is welcome, so they could be on the abdomen, out to the side, wide, or close alongside. And then once you've found your desired shape, blink the eyes closed for a few moments of breathing. Start to notice the fullness of the inhale and the depth of the exhale. Breathe in full. Breathe out empty. And as you continue to breathe here, you might notice that there's a subtle pause at both the top and bottom of the breath. Linger there a moment. Feeling the contrast of being completely full as well as completely emptying. Notice how you feel just with a few moments of observing the breath. When we observe the breath, a few things happen organically. The breath begins to lengthen. The heart rate might start to slow and settle. And it's an initiation of shifting the body out of a sympathetic state to a parasympathetic state. It triggers a release response in the body, a sense of recalibration within. Let this sensation be your touchstone, something to work towards in every posture you explore today. We'll be here for another 3-4 more rounds of breath. You can leave the count to me. Just simply notice, feel, and breathe. Blinking the eyes open, and then gently taking the knees back together again. Toe heel the feet a little bit wider than your hips so that the knees start to knock inward. So a little counter from an external rotation of the hips, creating an internal rotation, and this also helps to release the outer hip as well. Just a couple more breaths here, a little bit of a shorter hold. Staying connected to the breath, even in the moments in between each posture. Begin to now roll over onto your side for a moment there in the fetal position. From there, begin to push the earth away, rise forward and up into seated. And then from there, you can set your bolster and your blocks off to the side. Then return onto your back and reach for your strap. Once you lay onto your back, make sure that you feel comfortable here. Make any little last minute adjustments. Then take your strap, extend the right foot overhead while placing the strap across the mound of the right foot. You might even then wrap the strap a couple times around the hands, creating a really solid anchor. And then extend the right heel skyward as the toes peer down towards the nose. And then from there, play around with the depth of stretch. Notice where it's too intense, where the leg might be shaking, where you might feel the low back start to round, the hips peel up. That's a good indication you've gone too far. Rewind the pose to where it feels complacent, where there really isn't much stretch at all, and then land somewhere in between those two spaces. The objective here is to create a deep tensile sensation through the back of the right leg, particularly the hamstrings, the lower leg, the calf, and all the way into the Achilles. And once you've found that desired sensation, the objective here is to relax, not to pull or prod your way into a bigger pose, but to relax amidst the sensation until the sensation dissipates. And so here, blink the eyes closed once again. Relax the jaw, the shoulders. Let your hips get heavy. Redirect your mind's attention back into the natural rhythm and cadence of your breath. Feeling the fullness of the inhale and the depth of the exhale, as well as all of the spaces in between. And as you breathe here, even amid stillness, can you also notice how much movement is created within the body from the act of breathing? What can you feel expanding as you inhale? What can you feel softening as you exhale? And now that you've been here a few moments, has the sensation dissipated? See that as an invitation to reach in a little more fully, inch the toes a little further over the nose. Ensure that the low back hasn't flattened out. In fact, reestablish the natural lumbar curvature of the spine by aiming the sits bones or the tailbone towards the earth. They won't touch, but just slightly moving them in that way. You can continue by keeping the left knee bent or explore and experiment by stretching the left leg long, creating a little release through the left hip flexor, and this might in turn create a little more challenge to the back of the right leg. We'll be here for another 10 more breaths or so. Leave the count to me. And just know that you can always deepen in or rewind the pose or stay exactly as you are. When we hold the postures for an extended period of time, just as we are here today, it allows the deep connective tissues to begin to lengthen. So we're targeting not only the musculature of the body, but also the fascia. Here, particularly working the back line of the body, the full length of the back line of the right leg, and the fascial sling that ties right into the base of the foot. Just 3 more breaths here. And now take the strap entirely into the right hand. And you might like to place your pillow also to the outer right thigh, or you can even use a block as well. And then guide the right leg open to the right side. You can even tip the toes a little more towards the earth, heel spinning skyward, and a slight micro bend into the right knee. Then as feedback, bring your left hand to your left hip and encourage the left hip to root towards the earth. This will help to keep the pelvis neutral and to isolate the opening to the inner groin. Little bit of a shorter hold for this one, just 5 more breaths. Breathe in full and breathe out empty. Feel the body expand with each inhale. Notice all that is softening with each exhale. On your next breath in, gently guide the right leg overhead. Take the strap now into the left hand. And take your right thumb, place it right into your right hip crease, and draw the right hip slightly down. This will help to create an anchor. Then from there, guide the right leg about 2/3 across the body towards the left side till you feel sensation to the outer right hip and outer right thigh. Add a slight tonicity to the core by drawing the low belly slightly in and up. This will help to support the low back and spine, keeping the release to the outer right hip so that it's not recruiting movement from the SI joint or the low back. Imagine you could wedge your right heel to the upper left corners of the space you're in, while simultaneously getting heavier and heavier through the right hip. Again here, a slight micro bend in the right knee. For 5 more easy breaths here. On your next breath in, gently guide the right leg overhead. Reach the toes one last time over the nose. And then slip the strap off the right foot. Extend the right leg long, placing it towards the earth. And then take a moment just to simply feel the after image of the poses, to notice right side compared to the left side, how you feel through the front of the hip, the outer hip, even the low back, especially the low back. And then walking the feet in, beginning with the knees bent, feet flat onto the floor. Place the strap now across the left foot. Wrap the strap a couple times around the hands and encourage the left heel to inch its way a little higher than the toes. Little micro bend in the left knee. And then again, play around with the depth of stretch here. So start to notice when the low back or the hips start to peel up. If that's the case, then just simply rewind the pose, reestablish the curve of the spine. Notice where the pose feels complacent, and then once again, land somewhere in between where there's a deep tensile stretch through the back of the left leg, the hamstring, the calf, the Achilles, tying all the way into the heel. And then once you've found a sweet spot, linger there and breathe. Encouraging the lids to blanket the eyes. Drawing your awareness inwards so that the mind can focus intently on the breath. When the will of the mind tells you you need to go further or pull or prod into a deeper shape, see if you can let that thought go. And instead explore all the ways in which you can soften, breathe, and invite a sense of ease amidst the sensation. And now that you've been here a couple moments, if sensation has begun to dissipate, reach in a little further. Explore a whole new edge. Again, you can keep the right knee bent or stretch the right leg long. This might add a little added challenge to the back of the left leg. Know that at any point in time you can deepen in, rewind, or stay exactly as you are. Another 10 more breaths, give or take. Just leave the count to me. Taking the strap now into the left hand. And again, you might like to place a bolster or a block to the outer left thigh. And then open the left leg about 3/4 or all the way towards the earth, opening to the left side. The objective here is to create a release through the left inner groin while opening up the hips. You can aim the toes a little more towards the earth. Keep a slight micro bend through the left knee. And then blink the eyes closed once again and breathe. On your next breath in, gently guide the left leg back overhead. Take the strap now into the right hand, left thumb into the left hip crease as you draw the left hip slightly down. And then guide the left leg over to the right side about 2/3 of the way, give or take. Encourage the left hip to anchor as the left heel reaches up towards the upper right corners of the room. Targeting the outer hip, a slight tonicity of the core will help to support the low back and spine. Breathe easy once again. And now guide the left leg back overhead, reach toes over the nose. Slip the strap gently off the left foot and lower the left leg to the earth alongside the right. Notice the balance. How you feel right side, left side, low back, and hips. And then from there, hug both knees deep into the chest. Give yourself a great big squeeze. And either rock and roll to the side or up and down the length of the spine. And make your way forward and up into kneeling. For this next pose, you can set your strap off to the side. Reach for your blocks and place them to the front corners of your mat. You might like to have a little cushion as one knee will be grounded. And so if your knees are sensitive, it might be nice to have a bolster or a pillow handy just to tuck underneath. I'll leave that to your discretion. I personally, having little T-Rex arms, love to have the blocks a little higher. You might not need to use the blocks at all, or you can play around with the different height settings. And then place your right foot forward in between the hands, in between the blocks underneath the shoulders. Slide your left leg as far back as it will reach. And if you draw the heel towards the buttock one time and then set the shin and foot right back down, it can help to move the patellar out of the way or the kneecap out of the way. Then rewind your hips ever so slightly. Ease the hips back. Aim your tailbone towards the earth, zipping hips towards your ribs, creating a neutral pelvis. Keep the abdomen toned, the core engaged, and then gently scissor hug the hips so that your right hip draws back and your left hip gently begins to lean its way forward. This is ideally targeting the front of your left thigh and hip flexor. And when this region of the body becomes tight or imbalanced, it can distort the alignment of the pelvis and can cause compression into the low back, particularly the lumbar sacral region of the spine. It might be a little more challenging here for you to relax. And so as much as possible, still the gaze, whether it's on a focal point in front of you or blinking the eyes closed once again. Reattune your mind's attention back into the breath. Breathe in. Breathe out again. Just a few more breaths like that. Breathe in. And you might even envision the breath flooding to the lower left quadrant of your abdomen using a little imagination. And you might notice as that lower abdomen starts to move with breath, that sensation is increased. And it's almost like receiving a massage of the hip flexor from the inside to the outside. One more inhale. One last exhale. And then bring both blocks to the inside of the right foot. Swing your left shin and left foot towards the right side of the room so that your left leg is at a 90-degree angle. Then a little quarter turn with the torso here. So we'll even adjust the angle a little bit here so that you can see more of what's happening. So ideally, right knee in the same direction as the right middle toe, left foot straight towards the right side. And with this quarter turn, you'll likely feel a little more sensation to the right inner groin. You might even start to feel it coming to the outer hip, working 360 degrees around the hip. You can stay upright here for as long as you wish. You could lower part way, forearms to the blocks or all the way to the mat. The key here is to make sure that the knee doesn't fall inward, that you're not pulling movement from the knee, that you're isolating it to the outer hip and inner groin. More than ever, relax the shoulders, soften the gaze, or even blink the eyes closed. Breathe in till you feel the skin on the body expand. Breathe out and encourage everything to soften. Three more breaths, just like that. Breathe in. And breathe out again. And now rise all the way back up onto your hands. You can swing your back leg straight and then bring both hands to frame your right foot. From there, toe crawl the right foot across the body so that your right foot is in front of the left hip. Then slide the your left leg as far back as it will reach till the pelvis feels relatively level and even. Then take your pillow and wedge it right underneath your right buttock in between your right hip and the floor. And then if you wish, you can use blocks or a combination of blocks and the bolster to support the upper body. And then from there, start to fold forward as long as that doesn't cause any tension, tugging to the knee or the low back. If it does, then just simply stay here more upright. As an alternative, you could also take figure 4, either seated or reclining. If you're seated, right ankle over the left thigh. If you're reclining, same thing, just laying all the way back onto your spine. So whichever you choose, settle in, close your eyes, and breathe again. Encourage the jaw to relax so that even the skin on the face grows soft and supple. Let the fingers soften, uncurl, And the shoulders to drip away from the ears. Check back into the cadence of the breath. And if it's shallowed in any way, just simply notice and call it back to the breath. Focusing the mind's attention into an aspect of the breath. And this posture targets the outer hip, the piriformis, the glute muscles. And again, when we balance the muscles that surround the hip, it helps to free up the low back and the pelvis. It can also improve the overall health of the knee so that as we open up the hip and target the IT band as well, it helps to keep us from distorting the alignment of the knee as well. Just a few more breaths here. Last full breath in. And last full breath out. And then gently rise all the way back up onto your fingertips. Curl your back toes under and inch your back knee forward to create a little stability here. And then unravel the right leg, extend it straight back, toes to the earth, press your heel towards the back of your space. And then from there, release both knees to the earth. You can circle the hips, jump rope the spine, or if there's any other organic movement showing up in the body, honor that. And then moving on to the left side, take your blocks, place them to the front corners of the mat. Step your left foot in between and slide your right leg as far back as it will reach. Then rewind the hips ever so slightly. Create a slight lengthening of the tailbone towards the earth. Zip your hips to the ribs, tone the belly, and then lean the right hip forward. The objective here to target the right hip flexor, front of the right thigh. Close your eyes or steady the gaze and breathe. Just a few more breaths. And then from there, rewind. Place your blocks to the inside of the left foot. Here you can swing your right foot towards the left side of the room. And then a little bit of a quarter turn. So you'll turn yourself a little more to the right. And again, you can stay upright just like this, making sure the knee is in the same direction as your middle toe. You can lower part way down onto the blocks, onto your forearms, or all the way onto the mat. Settle in, close your eyes, and breathe again. And then slowly rise back up onto your hands. Straighten your back leg. Bring both hands in blocks to frame your left foot. And then toe crawl the left foot across the body to the right side of your mat in front of your right hip. Slide your right leg as far back as it will reach. A little cushion or pillow to the outer left hip. Know that you've got options, reclining figure 4 or seated figure 4. Or if you're here with me, you can always fold forward onto your blocks or bolster. Check back in with the breath. Let it anchor the mind once again. Notice what is present for you physically. And if there is a corresponding emotion or thought that runs through the mind. Dive deeper into the experience of observing the breath, of noticing, feeling, being with the breath, and see what shift might come from that practice. Last couple breaths here. And then gently rise all the way back up onto your hands. You can remove the cushion out from underneath. Inch your back knee forward, create some stability, and then unthread the left leg, extend it straight back, toes to the earth, heel reaches straight back. And then from there, you can always circle the hips, jump rope the spine. And if there's any other counter movements you're craving, feel free to take it. And then from there, you can leave your bolster as it is if you have it just like this, stacked on top of a couple blocks. Take the big toes to touch, sit your hips back towards your heels, and take the knees wide. This will help to release the front of the shins. So if you're ever working with any shin splints, helps to increase the plantar flexion of the ankles, so pointing the toes back. And then from there, fold forward into support so that the entire upper body, head and neck, is supported by the bolster. You can turn the head left or right and change it up at any point in between. This is one of my favorite poses to help create more space in the low back. Helps to stretch out the erectors, all the muscles that run up and down the length of the spine. Helps to free up any compression that might be in the lumbar sacral junction of the spine or the low back. It helps to recalibrate the nervous system, calm, soothe, and settle. Now to deepen the pose, deepen the breath. As you inhale, feel the back body expand all the way to the mid and upper back till you feel the shoulder blades widen. Soften and let your heart sink towards the earth as you empty the breath away. Moving at a snail's pace, rise all the way back up. And then take your blocks and your bolster and set the blocks so that they're about hip width apart. I like the second highest setting. And then place your bolster right on top. You can also replicate this with an ottoman or a piece of furniture that you might have at home. And then sit your hips close to the bolster. Swing the legs over the bolster, ensuring that the back of the knees are fully supported, and then lay all the way onto your back. This helps to create a slight pelvic tilt, helps to again release the low back, and then you can take your arms wide. Walk the shoulders underneath, and if you need any additional support, maybe a towel roll underneath the head and neck or a cushion, feel free to take it. Or if it feels comfortable as it is on the floor, just rest here. Resting here for our final Shavasana, option to send the legs up the wall or choose some other shape that invites you into a state of rest so that you can integrate all that you did here in the body as well as the mind. Begin to let go of any conscious control of the breath. And as you observe the breath, you might notice it breathing you, expanding you from the inside to the outside. With each exhale, feeling it soften you all the way within. Begin to blink the eyes open, wiggle fingers, toes, and then reawaken the body fully with a big, luxurious stretch, reaching hands overhead, reach all the way to the toes. From there, hug both knees into the chest. Give yourself a warm embrace, a gentle squeeze. Rock a little left and right, and then all the way onto your side. Settle there a moment in the fetal position. And then with the strength of your hands, rise forward and up into seated. Thank you again for joining me. Again, my name is Colleen, and I hope you enjoyed your stretch sesh and that your hips, hamstrings, and lower back feel fabulous for the rest of the day. Thank you. Namaste.